I hope you're doing well and welcome to the Horn Broadcasting Channel. My name is Mtalam Kusia. The Horn of Africa is entering one of the most politically dangerous economic periods in its modern history. Across countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea and Djibouti, millions of ordinary citizens are struggling with rising food prices, expensive fuel, unemployment, currency instability and declining purchasing power. What began as an economic crisis is now rapidly becoming a political crisis, one that could reshape governments, trigger unrest, weaken institutions, and redefine the future of the region. For many years, leaders across the Horn of Africa promised economic growth, infrastructure development, regional trade, and modernization. Roads were built, mega projects launched, ports expanded, and foreign investment increased. But today, many citizens feel disconnected from those promises because daily survival has become more difficult. Inflation is no longer just an economic statistic. It has become a political weapon, a source of anger, and a test of legitimacy for governments. In Kenya, the rising cost of living has already translated into protests and nationwide frustration. Risen fuel prices triggered demonstrations that left several people dead and dozens injured as transport operators and citizens protested against unbearable economic pressure. The political consequences are enormous because the cost of fuel affects every sector of the economy: transport, food distribution, electricity, manufacturing and agriculture. When fuel prices rise sharply, the cost of maize flour, vegetable, rent and public transport also rises. This creates a certain reaction of public anger. The Kenyan government now faces a difficult political balancing act. On one side, it must satisfy international leaders such as the IMF through the tax reforms and fiscal discipline. On the other side, it must respond to citizens who feel economically suffocated. This tension is politically explosive. Across Africa, history has shown us that when governments appear more responsive to international financial institutions than ordinary citizens, public trust begins to collapse. The danger for Kenya is that the economic frustration may evolve into long-term political radicalization among the youth. Young people already struggling with unemployment may increasingly view the political establishment as disconnected from their realities. Opposition leaders will continue using the high cost of living as a rallying cry against the government. If inflation continues rising while wages remain stagnant, future elections may become more emotional, more confrontational, and more unpredictable. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, the economic pressure is unfolding alongside deep political tensions and post-conflict instability. Although the country has experienced rapid infrastructure expansion and economic ambitions under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, inflation and conflict have severely affected household purchasing power. Discussions among citizens increasingly focus on the gap between official economic optimism and the harsh realities of daily life. In Ethiopia, the political consequences of rising living costs are especially dangerous because they intersect with ethnic tensions, regional instability, and unresolved grievances from conflict zones like Tigray, Amhara, and Oromia. Economic suffering can easily intensify political divisions. Communities facing poverty and insecurity become more vulnerable to mobilization by political actors, militias, and extremist narratives. The Ethiopian government also faces another political challenge: maintaining national unity during economic hardship. When inflation rises sharply and opportunities decline, regional dissatisfaction grows stronger. Citizens begin asking difficult questions. Why are food prices rising? Why is unemployment increasing? Why are resources unevenly distributed? Why are some regions developing faster than others? Economic frustration often transforms into identity-based politics. At the same time, the Horn of Africa is dealing with one of the worst climate-driven economic emergencies in recent years. Severe drought conditions across Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia have pushed millions toward hunger and water shortages. Reports indicate that nearly 26 million people are facing extreme hunger, while water prices in some areas have risen drastically. This climate crisis is not just humanitarian, it is political. When governments fail to provide food security, citizens lose confidence in state institutions. Rural communities abandon drought-affected areas and migrate towards cities, increasing urban unemployment and social pressure. Competition over water, grazing land and resources increases tensions between communities. In fragile states, economic desperation can strengthen armed groups and criminal networks. In Somalia, the consequences are particularly severe. Millions are facing hunger, malnutrition and displacement due to drought and economic instability. In such environments, extremist organizations exploit desperation by offering financial incentives, protection, or access to basic needs. Economic collapse weakens state authority and strengthens non-state actors. This creates a dangerous cycle where insecurity worsens the economy and economic hardship fuels further insecurity. The political impact of economic suffering is also becoming visible in public discourse across social media and online communities through the region. Many citizens increasingly connect corruption, conflict, and failed governance to their declining quality of life. Online discussions from communities across the Horn of Africa reveal growing frustration about inflation, unemployment, and the long-term cost of war. This matters politically because perception shapes legitimacy. Governments can survive economic difficulty for some time if citizens believe there is hope, fairness, and accountability. But when people begin feeling abandoned, ignored, or manipulated, political stability weakens rapidly. Another major political consequence is the growing possibility of inter-establishment politics across the Horn of Africa. Citizens are becoming less patient with traditional political elites. Younger populations increasingly demand transparency, jobs, affordable living conditions, and accountable leadership. Political movements built around economic frustration could become more powerful in future elections and public protests. In many ways, the Horn of Africa is entering a period where economic will determine politics more than ideology. Citizens are becoming less interested in historical politics narratives and are more focused on survival. They want affordable food, stable electricity, lower transport costs, functioning healthcare, and employment opportunities. The situation in Sudan shows how dangerous economic collapse can become when combined with political instability and conflict. The war has devastated markets, destroyed infrastructure, displaced millions, and deepened hunger. Economic collapse in Sudan is no longer simply about financial issue, it is a national survival crisis. Across the region, leaders are watching Sudan carefully because it demonstrates how quickly political systems can deteriorate when institutions collapse under economic pressure. Regional geopolitics also complicates the crisis. The Horn of Africa has become a battleground for international influence involving Gulf states, China, Turkey, Western powers, and regional rivals. Strategic competitions over ports, trade corridors, and military influence continues shaping political calculations. Yet ordinary citizens increasingly feel the geopolitical projects are not improving their lives directly. This creates another political risk: rising nationalism and populism. Leaders may respond to economic frustration by blaming foreign powers, immigrants, neighboring countries, or international institutions. Opposition groups may use nationalism to mobilize angry citizens. While such rhetoric may generate short-term political support, it can worsen regional tensions and weaken cooperation. And yet, despite these challenges, the Horn of Africa still holds enormous economic potential. The region has one of the youngest populations in the world, growing digital innovation, expanding infrastructure, strategic geographic importance, and major trade opportunities. Countries like Ethiopia and Kenya continue to attract investment and maintaining long-term growth ambitions. But political instability will depend whether governments can translate microeconomic ambitions into real improvements in everyday life. The future political question across the Horn of Africa is simple but powerful. Can government restore hope before frustration turns into permanent instability? Because when citizens can no longer afford food, fuel, water, transport, or rent, politics changes completely. Economic pain becomes political anger becomes protest protests become instability, and instability can reshape the entire nations. If you've got any question, contribution, or how to grow this discussion, please do so in the comment section. My name is Mtalam Kusia, and this is the Horn Broadcasting Channel.